and input enhancement. The language awareness pedagogical theory argues that the use of the first language leads to input enhancement, that is, the second language input that is coming to the learners is qualitatively enhanced. Now, input enhancement or raising consciousness about how language works was actually drawn attention to by Sherwood Smith. And he says, if you are in a forest, for instance, it is very difficult for you to find your way or to know about the shape of the forest itself. But if you take a step back and if you move away from this forest and you're looking at it from far, from a higher platform, then you can actually see the shape of the whole forest. And this is what the use of first language and the comparison of the first language with the second language actually enhances input. You're able to see language as a whole and what does it do? Apart from also looking later on, how does it work in terms of form? So it involves focusing on the formal features of the language and how do those slight differences which might seem minute to you actually change the meaning of your utterance. For instance, those who are learning Arabic, those inflections, you would see how does it change the meaning of Arabic utterance. So this input enhancement, that is raising the quality of the second language qualitatively, can be done by what is called induced salience. Now, what is induced salience and how can it be achieved? Inducing salience is drawing attention to a certain aspect by making certain aspects of the language that you want to teach, making them more important or more noticeable, making something importantly noticeable. So how can we possibly do that? The language awareness argues that if we use L1 of the learners as a point of departure, we encourage the learners to analyze something, to compare something, to use a rule from the first language and then apply it to the second language, for instance. How does it work? Remember, we talked about this difference between tomorrow and yesterday. And in Urdu, we just have kal, which applies both to tomorrow and to yesterday. So they tried taking the same example. They allow the learner to overgeneralize and see how does it apply in this language. How does this feature in Urdu applies to English language in a similar structure. And when the learners overgeneralize or make mistakes, then you use it as negative evidence. We have discussed it a lot of times before, what negative evidence means and how does it help to remember the type of mistakes you have made and to learn from them. So this negative evidence enables the learners to appropriate or to reconstruct their assumptions about the second language and see what is the gap between their current knowledge of a second language and the one that they want to achieve. And it is also argued that when the sole focus or when the only focus of in teaching is on meaning processing, as it happens when you are using communicative methodology, what you want the learners to do is only engage in understandable communication then the learners often at times fail to notice the difference in languages and to correct themselves. Now, if the learners are using incorrect form of language, like we talked about this difference between wow in Urdu and W, what sound in English, then it leads to fossilization of errors, because the communication will occur whether your learners say what or whether they say what. But this the error will become fossilized over the time because the learners stop paying attention to this difference. So drawing on the first language, L1, LA focuses on forms of the language and the functions of the second language, specifically exploiting a methodology. It argues for a methodology that is reflexive, makes learners think about their activities; inductive, they draw rules from it; interactive, there are discussions around it; and investigational, it arouses the curiosity of the learners to know more about the second language features.